The reason why understanding worship is so important is because by definition, whatever you worship, the thing you desire most, the thing that you are supremely devoted to, whatever that is, it will always hold the overwhelming controlling influence in your life. It will determine, it will direct what you do. And that's not just evident and plain in our own lives. We see that clearly in the passage this morning. You see, for King Nebuchadnezzar, the thing that he worshiped was power. And everything he does in the passage is controlled by a desire to either get power or to keep it. You see, but worship, it didn't just control his actions. Worship controlled the actions of Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego as well. See, they get routed out by some astrologers. It's always the astrologers. You got to watch out for them. They're just sketchy, right? Verse 12, they tell King Nebuchadnezzar, there's some Jews who've you set over some parts of your kingdom. They're important. You've given them a power, but they don't worship you, and they're not bowing down to you, and they don't listen to you, and they don't do what you've told them to do. Verse 16 and 18, King Nebuchadnezzar has threatened these men that if they don't bow down and worship, he's going to throw them into the fire. They respond to him. They say, we don't need to defend ourselves before you in this matter, O king, for if we are thrown into this blazing furnace, the God that we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold that you have set up. You see, their response, it was a declaration of their ultimate allegiance. Unlike King Nebuchadnezzar, they don't worship power and influence. They are clearly willing to not only lose their jobs, but to lose their status and their position as officials and authorities in the kingdom of Babylon. More than that, it's clear that they don't worship comfort, because it's very clear that they're not only willing to go into the fire, they're willing to lay down their very lives. And they don't worship approval either. They're not chiefly concerned about what their peers think, the other officials and leaders in the country. They're not even concerned about what the king of the greatest nation on the earth at that time even thought about them. No, they're ultimately concerned about what God thinks, and the fact that they know that God can save them, but that they're not sure if he will, and that it still doesn't change their actions. It still doesn't change the choice that they have made to refuse to worship false gods. It reveals that they don't worship control, that they don't need to know all the variables and have all the outcomes in hand before they're willing to choose to obey. You see, instead, it's clear that these men, that they worship God. And their actions, they reveal an ultimate allegiance, a supreme devotion, a highest loyalty to the one true God. You see, the object of their worship, it determined the direction of their lives. The question I want to pose to you this morning, as we seek to think and live as in the way of the exile in our own day, in our own world, is what are you worshiping? What are you worshiping? Because the object of your worship, it determines your life. It shapes your actions invariably. When we worship these things, when we worship power, or comfort, or control, or approval, it controls our lives in ways that make it impossible for us to live in the way of the exile, to live as God's kingdom people, his kingdom ambassadors sent into the world.